Thank you, Adriano. Can you hear me all right? Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I'm Jim Gooley. I'm not important. I'm just a cheerleader for the game, the women's beautiful game, for 50 years, just 50 years. And I'll do a little something about myself, all you need to know, and then I'll introduce our guests. I was 22 years old, a former school player, not very good club player. I got married, bought a house, and moved into this little town, and I said, you know what, I bet they need coaches, and I'd like to coach some kids. So I walk in, I talk to the registrar of this little club, Phyllis was her name, and I said, you know, my name is Jim Gooley, and I'm fit, I don't know, and do you need coaches? You're looking for coaches? And she said, well, yeah. I said, okay. She said, do you want to coach boys or girls? And I said, what's the difference? And she looked at me. This is 1978. And girls were playing in 1978. And we had begun just years earlier. And she looked at me with a strange look. I did not know there was a difference. I did not consider a difference. So from there, I've just stayed in the game. I've been cheering for girls and women on the field all the way up to the pro level. And we've done some damage up there, too, with the now NWSL Gotham, which I kind of helped get started years ago and then in years. But with that said, two wonderful people. We're going to be talking about club development. And some of the movers and shakers in the game are with us today. And first, let me introduce Jeff Mostyn, who is the former chair of AFC Bournemouth in England. Jeff, come on up, sit down. Okay. Jeff is the former chair. He is also now ambassador for AFC Bournemouth and also a FIFA ambassador. You've also addressed the United Nations General Assembly as well, so you know a little bit something about the game.
I'm going to quit after all.
All right. And we also have with us today Sophie Sauvage. Sophie, come on up. Sophie is the international head of women's football associated with the Seattle OL Reign, and that OL is Olympique Lyonnais. That's a connection in there. And Sophie is our French connection here in the United States with the Reign, and has done some remarkable work for many years. And she's very, very humble. You will not know everything she does. We'll find out, but we'll try to bring it out of her. With regard, and I'll sit down. With regard to club development, what does this mean? In the United States, football club is a strange term, and it means almost nothing. When we talk about business of sports, we don't talk about clubs in the United States, but of course around the world we do. When we're talking about club development, we're actually talking about the business of women's football. And is this good business? And who is in the business? And why are you in the business? And with all of what we've heard for the past, all morning long, is the development of the game, the problems of the development of the game, the cultural aspects, and who would want to get into this business and why? Well, from what I hear, it's a love for the game to begin with. And if I may, Jeff, if I can begin with you.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about your journey, AFC Bournemouth football club, the men's team. In 2007, Jeff inherited this team. Actually, you stepped into this team when it was at the very bottom of all of English football. The club was facing liquidation, and you came in with your heart and said, well, maybe I can do something to develop this club. Could you maybe give us some of that story?
Wow, just hearing those very words make me absolutely emotional again. It seems an awful long time ago now, considering where the club is. Jim, before I answer that question, can I just say that what an honour and a privilege it is for me to be here. I feel completely and utterly humbled, having heard the incredible speakers from this morning and this afternoon. It's just inspiration beyond anything that I could have imagined. This is my first visit to the conference. As you'll know, I'm passionate about supporting women and promoting women generally, let alone in sport and in football. But you've inspired me beyond belief, and I can't wait for the conference to finish in a macabre way so I can get started on promoting women globally. No, Jim, what was the question? No. No. Going back to those dark days, I first got involved in the football club in 2006 when a friend of mine was manager of AFC Bournemouth. The club were literally going out of business. We owed £1 million to HMRC in taxes, or the club did. I wasn't involved then. The then chairman tried to get a consortium of 10 people to put in £100,000 each to pay off that debt and become the new board. The struggle to try to get a consensus lasted about 5 months, during which time my passion was so great that I was actually physically paying the wages of the club that I didn't even own. I'll let you into a secret how embarrassing that was. I am actually a fully qualified financial advisor. And I'm only saying this in case anybody in the room asks me for financial advice. I don't even take it myself now. So when Jim alludes to the fact that I bought the club with my heart, I definitely did, despite my lawyers telling me to get into my car, drive from Bournemouth to Manchester, where I'm from, and never think about Bournemouth again. But it was one of those journeys where I felt I could make a difference as a financial advisor. Unfortunately, within 12 months of taking over, because of the increasing amount of debt, I had to put the club into administration. And it was a really dark day for the football club that had previously been in administration 10 years earlier. My wife and I had death threats, my children had death threats, and you wonder why, people would abuse you in that way when you're trying to save a club. Like I say, a club that I didn't even support. But I persevered, I paid for the administration, I sold the club shortly before it came out of administration, and unfortunately the people that bought the club didn't have any money, which again through due diligence we didn't pick this up. It was during 2008, the global financial crash, and I got the club back by default. I always think of this incredible time, one of my favourite films is the Griswold's Christmas Vacation, when he thinks he's going to get a bonus and he gets a 12-month franchise to the Jello Club. And I actually got the club back. I thought, what the hell do I need this club back for? But we finally persevered, and we brought in a new partner and developed the football club. And I remember when we got promoted in 2014-15, the first thing I said on the pitch when I was being interviewed by one of Clem's colleagues from the BBC was, if Hans Christian Andersen could ever have written a fairy story about football, it would have been about our football club. Because the journey was just incredible. We got relegated to Division 2, which is 4 tiers, the bottom of the English pyramid, and we started the season in 2007-8, minus 17 points. That was the penalty that was imposed upon us. And people in the room might think, why did you actually continue? We didn't get into positive points until Christmas. But we had a massive heart, and it was the start of what I call a siege mentality. And that siege mentality was a dressing room that was absolutely guaranteed to get this football club out of the mess that it was in and start a journey that is unprecedented in English football. And the pride that I have in taking a football club from minus 17 points in Division 2 to the height of global football, the English Premier League, is something that I'll always be proud of. It's an amazing journey. Thank you.
Jeff, when listening to you, and I know many people in the room here in the struggle of the women's game, leading ourselves to bankruptcy personally, many of us in this room. The culture of the club, I'd like to touch a little bit about that, because the culture of the club in England, we're talking about a men's team. We're talking about a men's team where you've you've shared your heart and your love for the game, and the fans resonated, your supporters resonated. So you've built this club, and I think also with the help of a coach. Let's talk a little bit about the coach, because the coach has to have something to do with the culture and the heart of the club. Let's talk about Eddie Howe.
Well, Eddie Howe, for those that don't know, is in my humble opinion one of the great English managers. He's a young man. It was like a father and son relationship that we had as chairman at the time, and he was the coach. I always give credit where it's due, and a lot of the credit goes to the executive of the football club, because on a day-to-day basis, I try to do what I'm good at, and that is motivating people. I've always said God didn't give me very much, but he gave me this incredible amount of enthusiasm, and somehow this amazing ability to make most people that I meet feel special. And that's what I try to do every day at the football club with every single member of staff. And as we were one of the smallest clubs ever to grace the Premier League, in fact, the smallest club ever to grace the Premier League, it was very easy for me to do, because we only have a small stadium. It's only 10,300 people, so I could get round every department. But our coach, Eddie Howe, somehow took the dressing room. I won't use the word that was used previously, because it's an overkill, but I think we know where we are. And he literally, he'd been with the football club since the age of 8. So as a player, the football club was in his blood. We were in such dire straits financially that the club couldn't afford to have the lunch that we've all enjoyed here, let alone players. We had a transfer embargo, so we had to make do with the players that we had. And how do you do that? You build up a culture of love and respect for each other. And one of my cliches, whenever I am speaking publicly, we developed 2 dressing rooms, which is quite unique. We have a dressing room downstairs, which my manager, coach, Eddie Howe, ran, and we had our dressing room upstairs, which the administration ran. But the most significant thing about these 2 dressing rooms is they had one common heartbeat. And we were all in this together. And what we've tried to do is transcend that passion and development of the football club into other areas. I had a massive choice to make when I bought the football club. We had a community sports trust, which is run by an incredible man called Steve Cuss. And we have an academy that was also, of course, without any funding. The easiest thing for me to do with my vice chairman would have been to jettison the academy and the community sports trust to save maybe £250,000 a year. So we're going back to 2006. And when you've hardly got any money, £250,000 is a fortune. And somehow, and I don't know why, I decided that that was the most important thing in the future of the football club. We have a conurbation of 400,000 people. What would happen to the young children who are aspiring, boys and girls, mainly boys then, of course, to be footballers or to have an involvement in football if we jettison the academy? What would happen to the community if we jettison the community sports trust? Every single week now, we go into schools and we teach 5,000 children, on average, a week, the pitfalls of antisocial behavior, the pitfalls of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, internet grooming, diet, and respect. Not only respect for parents and teachers, which is a natural thing for children to understand, but respect for their peers in classrooms, because that starts bullying. In multicultural classrooms, unless there is a cultural respect, then the whole pack of cards is going to fall down. And this was the culture of the football club that I had to try to develop and ensure that all those components were there for the future, irrespective of a lack of funds at the time.
Okay, Jeff, wonderful. I'm going to hold that right there, because we are going to come back to you, and we're going to talk about the Lionesses.
Yeah, everybody, at this point, everybody is asking themselves, what is she doing here?
Okay,
Actually,
it's coming. So, with that
but
said,
I'm going to speak.
Really, Jeff did a wonderful job in actually setting the stage of the structure, the pyramid, the academy, the community of English football. As opposed to in the United States with what we've done, I've actually called the Wild West of the women's game, was the United States over the past easily 30 years. Various iterations of the Pro League, the W League had been around for a long time, now we have WPSL, but everything is developed kind of independently. And Sophie Sauvage very smartly accepted an offer to come to Seattle. I want to talk about Seattle, I want to talk about the OL reign, I want to talk about the culture, I want to talk about your job, and what you see in the business environment, which led up to what happened last week.
Oh.
What happened last week? Yeah, why don't you tell the story, what transpired?
Well, yeah, so we acquired the reign at the end of 2019, finalizing the deal like 1 month before COVID hit, to be honest. So the first year was hard. And we were very ambitious. The idea was to expand the brand OL in the United States and to take a spot there in the what we call the country of women's soccer. And in 2019, it was even more true than today. We had this vision that we could really build something great there and also open opportunities for our players from Lyon to Seattle, from Seattle to Lyon. And we did a few things. And at that time, we were playing in a baseball stadium in Tacoma, south from Seattle. And we had probably the worst infrastructure of the league. And that was not really great, starting for the players, but also for everyone in the environment. And last week, Friday, we had the celebration for the last regular season home game for Megan Rapinoe, who's been with the team since day one. And so just for that, she deserved it. But as we know, she's much more than just that. And so we planned a campaign to make everyone aware of that. We've run a marketing campaign during 2 months, and I think we've achieved what we wanted to achieve. We had 34,000 people in the stadium, which is the NWSL attendance record ever. And we worked really in good partnership with the league to have the game pushed from CBS Network, Sport Network, to CBS. And CBS agreed on that, and they gave us a prime time slot, and we had the record viewership for any regular season game with 683,000 people watching it, which is big in the US. And so it was a little bit like our vision translated into reality, except that it's one game. So now in the future is to repeat that every time, because if we want to be able to change the world with women's football, soccer, we need to be successful in the business. That's the key for, I think, all of our projects, whether Angela's project or the NWSL and in Europe. And we have different ways to be successful. In the US, I would say that the structure of the league and this closed league model somehow is a favorable environment for investment. It gives some, not certainty, but some idea that the valuation will keep evolving positively. And if we look at what happened over the last 4 years, honestly, it's huge. The last expansion fee paid by Bay Area was $53 million. So just the right to have a team, and then they have to invest to have the team effectively. So I mean, the trend is favorable, and I think the thinking in Europe is how do we do that to unlock investment opportunities and to have people coming into the game. I know Kelly will talk about a lot of things later, so I don't go on
Well,
that.
thank you. So my curiosity is because all the NWSL franchises had developed independently, there are different ways of doing business, different ways of raising money. I was involved pretty much in my teams by being not only the money raiser, but also announcing the games and washing the clothes at times and driving the bus. But Seattle, there was some magic there. The town itself really responded to ownership's call to come to the game. Many different communities are represented at an OL Reign game. Could you talk a little bit about the structure of the organization? Do you have a board? Do you have somebody in charge, a president?
Oh, we do have a front office that is composed of, I mean, it's one of the smallest of the league actually, but we have 25 persons working on the front office. A CEO who came 4 years ago. I mean, he joined the club 4 years ago when we acquired the club. He came from OL,
Yeah.
and he's now the CEO, has been the CEO for 2 years, replacing the former president, who was also the former owner,
Yes.
Bill Predmore. And I mean, the project was to be able to develop the club and work on the product and be able to promote it in the best way, which requires to have salespeople, to have marketing people, to have financial people. We didn't make fundraising. It's an OL finance project, so we didn't search for other owners like many other clubs have been doing, and well, not Angel City, of course. Gotham now is involving a lot of people, but for OL it's a different model, and so the project was to really be able to make the community of Seattle aware that Megan Rapinoe and all the team was playing here, and we have tried to work around the culture. I mean, Jeff was talking about the culture, and the club culture is the key. You build on that. You don't invent something. And we were lucky to have a very strong culture created by the players. And it's always something fantastic for me to see the reaction of the new players joining the team. Many of them say, well, it's strange because the facilities are not great, but there is something in this team that makes you welcome and that makes you shine. So they feel that they can do their best in this team just because the team has built its own culture, and that's what we are trying to expand.
I've heard you speak before. I did a little bit of homework, and I listened to some of your interviews. And culture and society are big in your basket.
Yeah,
And
of course.
it seems that there's an endemic spirit between the community, the fans, and you don't have a big club or an academy system that is feeding and people paying dues and families coming in. You actually put out the sign, "We are you, you are us, and here's your home." And the people came in Seattle.
Well,
Is
we
that-
did
is
some
it that- is it
campaign.
that simple?
We did some campaign and put some money on the table to have them come in the stadium. But I mean,
you also said you're not looking for investors. Can you tell me about your marketing side? I mean, did you have local advertisers? Do you have national advertisers?
You mean how-
advertising revenue? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, I could talk about that if it was our premium revenues, but I mean, we have mostly local revenues from Seattle because, there is a system in the NWSL where some national rights are for the league and club have local rights. So you mostly work on the market to get the sponsors from around. But in Seattle, we have some big brands, and so some of them have been partnering with the club, like Boeing or Starbucks.
Just
or
throw it out
Gooley.
there, Boeing, Starbucks.
I mean, no,
I believe this is
That's-
important because that model can't be followed everywhere. Advertising in the United States is a big deal, and it helps to carry clubs.
I think today the brands are looking for something else. So if we are able to build the story that they need and want to listen around our football projects, we can have them on board. I mean, I won't compare to Angel City, but what Angel City has done,
Yes.
it's huge. They've built something from zero, and they've been onboarding tons of sponsors because of their story. So each project needs to have its identity and build around that, and find the brand that are ready to support it. And there is a need for this equity in the world.
Yes.
From all brands having invested heavily in the men's sports.
Well,
And I think there is a space for that. So
I think Angel City probably knocked on your door at some time in the past and said, "What are you doing here? This is amazing." You must have had conversations, and now the Bay Area is pretty much being born under the same kind of a social and cultural umbrella as did Seattle, as did Angel City, and that is the growth of the NWSL right now. There are cities all over America that wish to have a team.
yeah,
And just honestly, just a couple of years ago, I'm thinking 4 years ago.
yeah. I
That's
mean,
not the
9
case.
teams in 2014 and 14 teams next year, and probably 16 in 2026. So it's a huge growth.
Okay. I
And-
feel stability, I feel a future. The NWSL is now in its 11th year.
Yes.
And I've lived through the others. It's like, yikes, this is great. This is great. Jeff, I may come back to you. We were talking about culture and a mindset and a shift in a community or even a country. The FA, a couple of years ago, said women's football is important. And mandates were put into place. And large premiership brands or teams had a women's team associated with them. They may not have been equity, driven, but it was mandated. Of late, the Lionesses, on a worldwide scale, have changed the game in England. And I've worked with a lot of, folks who've come over from England, Kelly Smith being one, Rachel, the players themselves, who didn't wish to go back to England after playing in the U.S. They actually had a tear in their eyes saying, it's much better here from what we had. But now I'm hearing English families, English men, people were on the television with tears in their eyes in the streets of London, crying for the Lionesses. How does that spirit, that change in culture, not only resonate from your experience in a traditionally men's academy system, the old English way, to today, and what does that do for girls and women in your home?
Well, you've just alluded to it. The Lionesses, have set a benchmark that has set Britain alight with desire to get young girls and women playing football. And great credit to my colleagues from the FA, who in promoting first of all the Lionesses, the organisation, the passion and the desire to have a winning formula. In particular under the new manager, is just absolutely incredible. In Bournemouth, and I can only comment on what happens in our own conurbation, in 2015, when we were promoted to the Premier League, there was one team. And although they were playing under AFC Bournemouth's flag, we didn't actually run the club. It was run independently. And Steve Cuss brought the club back into the auspices of AFC Bournemouth. And this was one women's team. We had an ability counts team, disabled in the community. And today, funny enough, I was making copious notes on the flight over here because I had to consult with Steve. This has been like a runaway train in Bournemouth, and I can't even keep up to date with how many teams and how many young girls are now under the club's umbrella. So we started off with one team in 2014-15 who were playing with the men's kit that was handed down from the previous season. That's how poor, if you like, the relations were. Today, we have over 350 young girls and women playing for AFC Bournemouth. And the juniors from the age of 5 under the various FA sponsorships and under the Premier League sponsorships as well. It is just incredible. You see young girls walking around Bournemouth now with their heroes from the Lionesses on their backs. It's just incredible, the shirts. When I first got involved in 2007, you wouldn't even see any of the men's teams. You would only see Tottenham, Arsenal, Manchester United, Liverpool shirts in Bournemouth. Today, at least, even the men are wearing our own kit. But this is an incredible incentive from the FA that has driven this with the support of the Premier League and the various sponsors. And we're really proud of what we do in the community with young girls. And when we go into the community now, you find there are more young girls putting their hand up to want to apply for the academy. How do I get into the academy? It's amazing. The boys take it for granted that they have a right to play football. And there's a facility at most schools for boys to play football. Has the same facility been offered to girls? No. Is it offered to them now? Not yet. But in a great deal of areas, it's certainly rising to the top of the tree. And as long as the Lionesses continue to set the world ablaze, with their exciting football, their passion, when you hear the post-match interviews, it's the adrenaline, the raw emotion from the girls is just a pleasure to hear. There's you don't hear the political overtures that you generally get in the Premier League of people who are making excuses for, mediocre performances. It's, that for me, it's just a new light at the end of the tunnel. And equality is a long way away. I think, this is why we're here today. Surely, unless I've sort of misread the script, that we're actually here to promote women in sport, and in particular, there's a clue in the title of the conference, that we need to try and promote the well-being of women globally, not just amongst the nations that are recognized as leaders, and in particular the USA, which set an incredible example. What I learned today about the support, the passion, is off the Richter scale. That needs to, emanate in India. It needs to emanate in all the areas where young girls and young women don't have an opportunity, but the opportunity is there if somebody will give them the opportunity. I think as I was, just listening, with huge emotion to some of the presenters today, I thought to our own club strapline, and our own club strapline is "Together anything is possible." And surely, with this conference, together anything is possible. Let's just do it.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Sophie, I want to... Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, yes.
If I may, in my dreams, because Jeff said something very important. He talked about the success of the Lionesses, which was brilliant. And by the way, just reading the £600 million plan announced by the government, I hope it's true. I mean, I see the headlines from France, and I say, wow, I want to be there, and I want that to be here. So I hope it's really true. But there is a lot that is on the shoulders of the success of the teams in the women's sports. It's in the US, they didn't win the World Cup this year, and suddenly everything was bad. But no, I mean, it's sports. You win, you lose, but you build all the time. So I hope that at some point, we are not just interesting when we win. I mean, we can lose and still be interesting and still be part of the construction.
Yes, certainly. The resolve, yeah, we lost. And the team was not the team they were supposed
You
to
lost.
be.
We lost too, by the way.
Okay, we lost. The nice thing about a game, there's always another game. You know, that's the one thing about the sport. But the culture shift in the U.S., okay, it began with the ERA movement back in the 70s. The Equal Rights Amendment, women said, enough, and why are you treating us here? From that, girls started to step onto the field. And in my high school, Diane walked onto the playing pitch. And the coach says, she's trying out just like you guys. Now, playing soccer in the United States was not considered the manly game. And the American football team practiced right next to us. And they called the soccer players something. I'm not going to say it.
No.
I was confident. I was fine. I wore knee socks and shorts, and I had long hair like Keanu Reeves. I was fine. And I was confident in who I was. But I whispered to Diane. I leaned forward. And this is important because it's happening today everywhere. I said, Diane, why? And she whispered while she's tying her boots, I just want to play. That was it. That was it. Now, 3 days went by. She took herself off, and the coach said, Diane has something to say, gentlemen. And she said, thank you. And she walked away. I was 17, a caveman, but I credit my parents for telling me behavior like that is caveman. She just wants to play. And from that moment, Diane, Mia Hamm, Abby Wambach, Michelle Akers, Brianna Scurry, Christine Lilly, Christy Rampone, that what became the 99ers started in the 1970s when they were born, and their parents said, you can play. There was a place to play. The law had changed in the United States. President Nixon signed Title IX, which said college opportunities for boys, that's great. For scholarships, you better give $1 to a girl, even Stephen or even Stephanie, whatever you want to call it. From that, the American household said, go, Susie, go, play this, play that, college is calling. And that changed the culture in America. That developed the 99ers, because they all came from great college programs. And from that, the spirit of the professional leagues and all their iterations came from that. Now we've reached that particular point, thanks to, be modest, thanks to the Seattle, the OL Reigns of the world. We have this amazing pool of spirit and talent, which is overflowing, and now we call to the international players who say, we've come to the United States, we've played, and now, but we can stay in France, we can stay in England, or we can move around all of Europe right now. And the money is there, the investment is there, the value proposition, the actual, the perceived value of a franchise at $50,000 is just unheard of just a couple of years ago. If you had to look to the future, just in the next 5 years from now, the next 10 years from now, watching this exponential rise here, what's your vision for tomorrow?
Well, I think only positive, and with challenges on both sides of the Atlantic. If we talk about the professional game, and we need to develop talents.
Mm-hmm.
I'm confident that sponsors will come, that fans will be attracted. But I know we need to develop talent to keep up with the growth of the game everywhere. There is also, from the US point of view, we look at Europe and we say, wow, this Champions League is something. So we need to have this thought about
Let's talk about champions, yeah.
about an international competition, a meaningful international competition, because I think the Champions League is one of the key points for players playing in Europe. And then I think we have to create more opportunities for the clubs to play against each other, and probably there are opportunities to have more pre-season games or kind of tournaments, and that's what the players want, because they also want to know who is the best, and so that's part of it. Playing. We know they are very competitive. They play against each other in the national teams competition, but it's one time every 4 years, so it's not enough. So we need to create opportunities to have Man City against OL Reign, or OL Reign against OL. By the way, I wanted to do that, but it was not possible.
No doubt. But
that could have
don't
been
give
fun.
up. Don't give up. Don't give up. There's always a need for that. So,
Yeah.
Jeff, you are a spiritual leader for your club, and what do you see the spirit of the game in England, or for the girls and women in your community and country?
Well, I can't speak for the club because I'm no longer the chairman of the football club. Having stepped back last November, for those that don't know, we now have an American owner, Bill Foley, who owns the Las Vegas Golden Knights. And, Bill has brought his own culture, into the football club. And, all I can do is praise, what he is trying to do. For me, the last 6 months has been, as you can imagine, pretty emotional. Having been at the club for 17 years, I'm now the ambassador for the Community Sports Trust, which is literally the love of my life, just working with people who are less fortunate than we are, and all my local charities. I think that it's what Bill has promised is, the first thing he's done, he's brought the women's elite team into the club. So for the first time, where everything else was run by the Community Sports Trust, he has now brought the elite women's team under the club's auspices, which is a real step in the right direction, because the girls will be getting contracts, which they haven't done before. So that is, something, and what I'm talking about is, professional, contracts. The girls' team is incredibly successful. We've had 2 consecutive promotions. We're now in Tier 4 of the pyramid. So that takes me back to 2006. And if it was possible for the men to achieve the Premier League, I'm sure it's possible for our incredible women to achieve the same thing over a different period. We are building a new training ground, state-of-the-art training ground for the men, and Bill has ensured that the women will be training there as well. This is just an incredible step in the right direction. With the help of the local council and the Premier League Foundation, there is a £3.5 million stadium this is a joint venture with one of our local councils, and our elite women's team play there. The girls in the development squad train at the Vitality Stadium, the home of AFC Bournemouth, on the 3G surface. I'm going to go back with some, ACL stories here after this morning's session, and hopefully, add notes to what is already in the development. But as I say, I can't speak firsthand because I'm not part of the inner sanctum now on what the club's future is. But for me, the future is very bright. All credit to Bill. He's seen that it is absolutely important to ensure that the women have the same rights as the men. During my tenure at the football club, I was the equality champion for the football club. So EDI is, something that is very close to my heart. And I will always champion equality not just women, but equality generally. One of my roles, or the last remaining role at the FA, I'm on the FA Disability Committee. And that's something else that I'm absolutely passionate about. So I see a great future. We need, let's make no mistake, we actually need, it's very easy to dismiss the men's game as non-important because it's not part of the conference agenda today. We need the elite men's leagues to generate the huge amount of income from broadcasting in order to be able to fund what we hope in the future will be some form of equality, for the women's team as well. And, Jenny's incredible work with the new broadcasting deal off the Richter scale, something that wasn't even, thought about. If anybody had said, is this possible, the sums that have been brought in, you'd have been sectioned and probably never let out. It's a reality now. So people are working hard behind the scenes. It's about noise. And I think in the first sessions that we had today, both Carly and the doc alluded to one word, money. And it's either a fairer distribution or it's getting sponsorships, it's making people aware, it's knocking on doors. We have to set an example here. We have to be the centres of influence in how women's football progresses and how it's recognised and how huge corporations and sponsors start looking favourably to support the agenda that we have been talking about today.
Thank you, Jet. Sophie, the women's voice at the top. The women's voice at the top. Okay, we talked about this a little bit a couple of days ago. When we talk about club development, are there issues? Is there a need for, we've heard about men telling us what to do and how to play and where to go. I don't sense that with Seattle, and I certainly don't sense that with the National Women's Soccer League. Okay, the women's voice at the top, it looks as though it's healthy, it's loud, it's clear, and it's successful. Give us your views.
Well, it's a very different model. I mean, it's a single entity. It belongs to the clubs. The board is only the teams, and so everything is centered about the interest of the teams and of the league, which is common somehow. Then there are discussions whether it's league rights or team rights, but that's not that meaningful. We are all working in the same direction.
Okay, you're in a good place, yes?
Yes, I think we're in a good place with that governance, and then if we talk about the voices at the top, well, I really believe that we need more women everywhere, in all the instances, in all the organizations, especially in football, and I'm thinking of France, of Europe, I think that is a truth everywhere.
Can Spain be mentioned right now?
I said Europe.
You said Europe.
Yeah.
Okay.
And no, but it's meaningful because I think we see the world in a different way, and so we can express things differently and also understand some needs differently. And Karen was telling us a story. She will tell you, but I mean, women see the world differently, and so we need these voices.
Different and good. So.
And just to finish, because I think Jeff said we need support from the men's football, and that's true, in a way that we need them to be allies. We just don't need them to want to control our development pace, but we need them to support. And I feel strongly that whether in England or in France, where women were banned from football during 50 years and 40 years, there is a huge debt from the men's side to the women's side. And just recognize that could help. and not wanted to control everything,
Okay.
that would be very helpful.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think, well, thank you, our panelists, thank you very much. Do we have, no time for questions, okay? Questions will be personal off stage,
Yeah.
wonderful. Again, thank you, Jeff Mostyn and Sophie Sauvage
Jim, thank you.
for your depth. Thank you.
Thank you.